Mr. Augustine?
Here.
Mr. Fodor?
Present.
Mr. Hack?
Here. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanala? Yes. Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Agenda approved. Invocation tonight will be given by Christine Shu, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Please stay at home.
Holy One, you have given us the responsibility of leadership in the affairs of our city. May what we say and do here this night be worthy of your sight, in your sight, and for the benefit of those who have entrusted to us this duty. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion, I'd like to make a motion to excuse Katie.
Okay.
We don't forget.
Let's second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Can I have approval of the minutes from the last council meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from 9/8/2020.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same. That is carried. We have no public comments tonight. Tonight we have planning commission.
Planning Commission met on September 10th, 2020. There were 4 items that came from the Planning Commission. The first was a conditional use permit modification request for 448 Menor Avenue to have an allowable use added to a bed and breakfast conditional use permit. The added use was the assembly use for up to 49 occupants. The Planning Commission gave a favorable recommendation with a 3-2 vote to allow an assembly use up to 49 occupants. As long as the temporary modification expires in 12 months, the property owner needs to work with administration and council on a text amendment to allow the assembly use for bed and breakfast uses. And a parking agreement shall be approved by the law director prior to using the property for an assembly use. And this parking agreement shall provide for the rights of the respective parties to use the parking area in a manner adequate to accommodate multiple users or to share parking spaces on specific days or at specific times. The second item that came before the Planning Commission was review of the non-compliance with the design review for the Lake County Employees Federal Credit Union for the proposed rack of the HVAC system. The commission agreed to accept, and that since there is no formal contract for the installation, the commission stipulated that the applicant is to provide a status update on the installation of the approved rack in 3 to 6 months or sooner if applicable. The third item was Grand River Baptist Church. They came back for a temporary use permit allowing a use of office space in a zone that's normally not allowed. They permitted another year for a temporary use permit as long as there's no permanent signage, that the temporary signage is only used when the space is in use for the church, and that the certificate of compliance shall require indicating that the building or part thereof and the proposed use thereof are in conformity with building codes, fire codes, and other chapters. This passed it unanimously. And then the last item was a temporary structure permit for the YMCA. Every year the YMCA comes back for a temporary structure permit for the containers that are at the rear of the building. The temporary structure permit was unanimously approved.
Any questions?
public hearing for 448 Manor Avenue conditional use permit modification request.
A second.
We need a roll call for that?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Can I call point of order?
Yes.
I'm confused because Monica's email today indicated that it had to be a written request from council. So is
And I
this
have that
a little written request and it's okay to do this, or is this not appropriate?
I checked this morning, and we need to make sure everybody's agreeable, and I have to send the email within 3 days.
I see.
So yes, because I didn't want to send it without everybody signing in on it.
Okay, I just read it to say that 4 members had to send a written one, but you're saying that only council as a whole has to send a written one. That's how I read the email. I don't, maybe I misread it.
The way it's written is that as long as a majority of council calls it, it has to be in writing to the clerk within 15 days of the notification.
So doing it this way is okay.
As long as you put it in writing
I
and
got
get
that
it
ready
to
to
the
go.
clerk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, go on, go back to the roll call.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denali?
Abstain?
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Okay, we will get a letter then.
Got it. And an email is okay, Monica?
Yeah, as long as it's in writing.
Okay. To Amanda?
To Amanda's and Lynn.
Oh, you don't, and you, I was gonna see some. Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to the JED.
Okay, JED had their quarterly meeting on September 18th, 2020. The meeting began at 8 a.m. Everyone was present. We had departmental reports, finance report, and we reviewed the revenue and expense worksheet. And I must say, Andy does a very good job. Thank you very much. We are on target, and we are only 4% down from last year, which they consider very good. Economic Development Committee, there wasn't anything to talk about at that point. On old business with JED recruitment, Rita continues to encourage and apply to get parcels into the JED. There is a building they're planning on going at a hotel, and it will also be in the JED recruitment. So that'll be, they're perfectly willing to move into the JED. We also had, in last year, the end of last year, early this year, we made a change to stop having the JED's own website and incorporate the JED website into Concord Township, because it was felt that no one is going to really go out and look for a Concord Kingsville JED. They're going to go to Concord, so that's where they're first going to go to try and find it. So we moved it under there. It saved money as well. And Rita ran a 6-month baseline to see how that's working, and the statistics look pretty good, so she's got a baseline on that. We're going to run every, I think she said every 6. We also had to have a records disposal approval, which we voted on and did that. We also have an expiring term. My term is expiring, so council will need to either re-up me, or there's some changes that need to happen. So with the fact that it was on this, we had till the end of the year, so we'll talk about that as well. There was a discussion of insurance contracts, and it was asked if right now it is written through Love Insurance and through the Ohio plan for townships. And the board decided that we really wanted to, we had this particular situation, particular insurance agency for the last 8 or 9 years, and the board decided it was time to go out for an RFP. So Rita asked me to help her write that, and they're going to send an RFP to get other carriers other than the plan, Ohio plan as well, for their insurance. And then we have the executive session for pending litigation and economic development. And then the meeting adjourned at 9:45.
Any questions from council?
I have one.
Yes.
Where is the hotel going?
On
Okay, thank you.
Whether it goes or not, I don't know.
All right, any other questions? And we'll move on to legislation. Ordinance number 1, third reading.
An ordinance amending section 1349.21 of the Painesville Code of 1998 relating to rank vegetation and landscaping features and declaring an emergency.
No changes.
No changes. We got any comments, concerns? Any motion then?
Move to adopt.
Second,
Roll call.
Mrs. Denali?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Ordinance number 1 is passed. Ordinance number 2, third reading.
An ordinance enacting section 1349.211 of the Painesville Code of 1998 relating to tree lawns and declaring an emergency.
Motion to adopt.
Okay.
Second,
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denali?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, ordinance number 2 is passed. Ordinance number 3, second reading.
An ordinance amending the schedule of fees for reviews, approvals, and other procedures pertaining to the administration and enforcement relating to the Unified Development Code of the City of Painesville and declaring an emergency.
This is just to put fees in place for the preliminary and final plats.
And it did say it could go for three readings.
It can, if you'd like.
Okay, we'll keep this on for next time for the third reading. Resolution number 4, first reading.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
This is the annual piece of legislation that the Lake County Auditor's Office requires to be filed by October 1st. It's a resolution accepting the amounts and rates. The city projects to receive approximately $2,515,000 in property tax revenues in 2021.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denali?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt?
Second,
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denali?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution number 4 passed. Resolution number 5, first reading.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to acquire title to the property located at 30 South Park Place, Painesville, Ohio, for the limited purposes of securing federal funds for abatement of an environmental hazard created by the presence of asbestos on the property, carrying out the asbestos abatement process, and conveying title of the property to Painesville Tower LLC upon completion of the abatement process for the purpose of utilization of the property in manner approved by the city, with all to be accomplished at no cost to the city, and declaring an emergency.
The city of Painesville has been working for several years to be in a position at 30 South Park Place to remediate the environmental hazards of asbestos within the building and return the building into a viable use. Through the city's US EPA assessment grant, we have conducted a Phase 1, a limited Phase 2, a pre-renovation asbestos survey, and an asbestos abatement specification report. The details within these reports has positioned us to be able to seek cleanup funding through the US EPA. The grants are highly competitive grants. And by taking title to the building, the city will secure the highest possible opportunity to be successful in this grant application. The EPA anticipates awarding an estimated 26 cleanup grants across the United States for an estimated $13 million. And we are competing first within our region for this grant, or as a part of our region. And US EPA Region 5 includes Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana. There will be no cost to the city. The grant match requirement and all costs associated with this project will be covered by the developer. And I'm recommending that this legislation move forward. I'm requesting that council pass legislation on October 5th to allow us the opportunity to transfer title prior to the grant application deadline of October 28th. There will be opportunities for the public to view the draft application after October 9th, and there will also be upcoming announcement of public meetings there following.
Shoot.
So, if it sounds like, maybe I'm wrong, that this is contingent upon the grant being given. So if the grant is not given, what do we do with the title that we already have? What happens to it?
It'll go back to the developer.
So the developer has title right now?
Right.
Okay.
It's almost like a simultaneous transfer, that's kind of what we're anticipating.
Okay.
Since we last spoke on this matter, and I called Kathy about it today, I've kind of prepared like a 12-page development agreement. Unfortunately, when my assistant gave it to me today, she kind of rolled her eyes and then she had to sign, so I have some modification to it. But in it, I said, and I've repeated it so many times that I'm sure I'm going to have to take it out, that it's going to be at no cost to the city.
Right.
But the way we're doing it is, as I'm proposing as it stands now, is that once we get title, we apply for the grant. If we're unsuccessful in terms of applying, getting the grant, then the property would transfer back to the developer. But yet, all the costs that we may have incurred during that period of time that we own the property is supposedly going to be paid by the developer. And I'm trying to structure something in place now, like a performance bond or something in lieu of a performance bond, where we can be assured that these costs that we have, like insurance that we may be required to get for environmental purposes, things like that will be covered by the developer. This is somewhat consistent, Christine, with what we did with the annexation of the Isley Park, the 500 acres. And we acquired the property from the developer, and basically for the purpose of filing a petition with the commissioners for annexation, because I just found a way to remove their discretion in the matter, because they didn't want to grant the annexation. And if that had not come to fruition, then there was a provision that reverted the property back to the developer. And we're following the same sort of thing, if it doesn't work.
So all of this, the application and so on and so forth, is all contingent upon the developer agreeing to sign the 12-page document.
Exactly.
Okay, so if he says, no, I won't sign it, it's dead in the water at this point. I mean, for us, as far as the grant and so on and so forth.
Correct. If there's no
Yes, I would say, because unless you want to proceed without getting some sort of verification that they'll cover our costs in the matter. You know, that's up to council, but from my understanding, that's not what council is interested in having done.
I personally am interested in no cost to the city.
Right. And how long could this be tied up for? Years?
In terms of the environmental program,
Yes.
well, how long, Cap, from the time that we would get, if we would be successful in getting the grant, how long before, and we would be running the project, so we would be hiring an engineer, getting the bid specs, doing all the stuff like you would normally do. All that, going to bid, getting the appropriate contractor, and completing the project. What's the timeline?
Yeah, we're working on those details now, but we anticipate it being about 12 to 18 months. We're going to see if we can get within that time frame from a project standpoint. It may go just a bit beyond that. We have up to 3 years under the grant, but obviously we don't want this to be a 3-year project. The application is due October 28th, and they'll announce award in spring of 2021. They've only indicated it's spring, so we don't know an exact date.
Yes, Lori?
So what would happen if we didn't, not that this would ever happen, Kathy, but what if we didn't get the grant in on that? What if we didn't make application correctly or on that?
Well, as it's written now, it's our, pursuant to the development agreement, would be our responsibility, once we got title to the property, to apply for the grant. So as it's written now, we would be in breach of the agreement.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to leave this on first reading. Thank you.
And this legislation, we worked on this legislation towards the end of last week. I think it kind of reflects my comments about it at the last meeting. It gives the city manager some leeway. It doesn't direct her to enter into an agreement, but allows her to enter into an agreement. So if something happens that it goes off the tracks, then she can use her discretion in terms of short-circuiting the whole thing.
Thank you. Tonight we have no unfinished business. New business, none. Administrative report, law director.
I have nothing at this time.
City manager.
I would just like to remind you that HR director sent you a copy of the new employee handbook. There is a sheet you need to sign that you received that, so please sign that and get it back to us when you can.
Can we email that to you?
Yeah, you can scan it, email it back.
Thank you. Clerk of Council, correspondence.
The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, October 5th at 7:30. This is the last week for the Thursday farmers market and Friday night car cruises. Recreation's Fall Fest activity bags are on sale for $5 and scheduled to be delivered the week of October 19th. Recreation's Fall Photo Scavenger Hunt started today and will run through October 21st. Saturday, October 10th is the second annual Fall Community Cleanup Day. For more information, you can go to painesville.com/cleanup. Wednesday, October 14th is story time with the Painesville Police Department in the gazebo at Painesville Square. And trick or treat is still planned for Saturday, October 31st from 6 to 8.
Thank you. Closing comments, Lori.
I have nothing.
Tom.
I have nothing.
Christine.
I have nothing.
Jim. Nothing. Oh, wow. Nick. Nick.
Nothing.
Wow.
Wow.
Great. At this point, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session being held in accordance with ORC 121.22H to consider confidential information relating to marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiate with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance in accordance with section 3735.67 of the revised code.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sinala?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shu?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.